Welcome to the series that we are calling the Short Film Angle, where we shine a light on new short films and interview the filmmakers, getting insights into the filmmaking and storytelling process. My name is Alex, and let's get into it. Today, I'm talking to Jake Wachtel about his new film, The Sentry. Jake began his career making short documentaries for nonprofits and social impact ventures, working in the Global South. In 2015, he moved to Cambodia to teach a year-long class in filmmaking to children as part of the Filmmakers Without Borders initiative. He ended up settling in Cambodia and developed his first feature there, Karma Link, which was a Buddhist sci-fi that opened Critics Week at the Venice Film Festival. And it was set in the community where he taught and produced with a majority Cambodian cast and crew, including his former students. After Karma Link, he decided to make the film that we're discussing today, The Sentry, an action comedy that follows a Western super spy on assignment in Cambodia, who ends up having a haunting encounter with a guard that forces him to kind of confront the deeper consequences of his actions on the local community. So, without further ado, let's get into that conversation with Jake. Welcome to the Film Angle, Jake.
Thanks so much for having me.
No worries at all. Your filmmaking journey has taken some kind of fascinating turns so far. You've done documentary shorts. You've relocated to Cambodia. You've directed a feature-length film, which is, I believe, considered Cambodia's first sci-fi feature-length film. And now you're returning to short filmmaking. But I just kind of wanted to know, before all of that, what sparked your passion for filmmaking?
My passion for filmmaking began when I was a little kid. It grew out of a passion for magic. I was obsessed with magic, performing magic, watching magic. I did magic at my cousin's birthday parties. And so when I was a little kid, I got my hands on my parents' VHS camera and used to film magic shows with my little sister. And that turned into more like trick photography stuff. Which is why like Michel Gondry was my favorite director when I was in high school. And, and later in film school, I learned about the Lumiere brothers and Méliès and all that, how that early stuff was kind of the same thing of exploring the magic potential of the camera. And yeah, it kind of grew out of there of seeing that stuff. Like did the trick photography kind of stuff.
Yeah, we had a short filmmaker on our show recently who was a magician, and we kind of spoke about whether like film is just one big illusion, and having kind of control over that is something that maybe inspired you as a child.
Yeah. There's transition from magic into filmmaking, and that kind of took over my life. And I guess I became even more enamored with it. There was an old classic cinema in my town growing up that played. There's an Alfred Hitchcock Film Festival, and it was all on film, the reels. And I remember I was 13 years old during this festival, going to see North by Northwest, Rope, and Vertigo. And I just like was so taken in by these films that were made so long ago. And I had this idea before seeing these that like a black and white movie had to be boring, and they like really rocked my world. And that was around the time when I started telling people that I want to be a director when I grow up.
Brilliant. And then how did that turn into kind of pursuing that career then, that kind of passion as a child?
Yeah, well, I was always making films through high school. Any opportunity I could get to turn a school project into a film project, I was doing that. I was making films with my friends. Through college as well. And then after I graduated, I had this idea that I was like gonna try to go to LA and make my way, in the epicenter of that stuff. And I went traveling after I graduated from university, and towards the end of that trip, I found myself in Cambodia. And I grew up in Palo Alto, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley, which is like a very sheltered and privileged bubble. And then I find myself traveling in, in the global South for the first time, and had this sort of very cliche experience of like privileged white boy gets his bubble burst and is like, oh my god, what's going on in this world, and how have I not been paying attention to everything that's happening? And I got a very strong desire to like turn my back on the Hollywood dream that I had had, and instead to work in the field of development. And I did that and found my way back into filmmaking by doing these short form videos for nonprofits and NGOs, and spent many years doing that. And that led me to want to stay longer in a single community. You know, I would like go into a community for 4 or 5 days, point my camera around and leave. And and I found this opportunity to teach filmmaking in Cambodia for a year with an organization called Filmmakers Without Borders. And that was what got me to sort of plant myself in Cambodia. And when I signed up for that, I had no idea that I would then move to Cambodia and that would become my home, but that's the way that my life has unfolded.
Wow, that's great. I'm interested. What is the film industry like in Cambodia? It's kind of like something many of us in Western culture we don't often hear about, and we're a little bit in our own kind of like Hollywood Western cinema bubble sometimes. So, is there a thriving industry over there?
Yeah, I mean, so it's this is really crazy, tragic history where there had been a very thriving art scene in Cambodia in the 60s, cinema and music, and then when the Khmer Rouge came to power in the 70s, and there was a genocide in the country, and one of the groups they targeted was artists, and they wiped out a generation of artists. And for a very long time, as the country was rebuilding, you know, it was very hard to do anything in the arts. But these days it's like growing super fast. There is now, I would say, a pretty well developed local industry. If you think about the fact that Cambodia has like 15 million people, and a lot of them are still rural. You know, there's sort of only so much that their box office can support because of the population size of the country. And I think given that there's quite a bit of cool stuff being made, there's a lot of horror movies. Year after year, the quality is going up. The number of young people making short films at like a very high level is increasing. There's, you know, more films that are hitting the international festival circuit that are directed by Cambodian directors. So it's small, you know, it's a small scene from one perspective, but it also feels like it's growing massively. And given where it's like coming from, it's really a thing to get to witness. You know, I've been living in Cambodia on and off for a decade now, and I've just witnessed a huge growth. And I can even mark that in my own films. You know, I made a feature film that we shot in 2019, and then the Sentry, which we just shot last year. And there's so many there's like so many more people in the industry to work with, in the art department, and, you know, and first ADs and this kind of stuff. There's like the people that make up a film industry. It was harder to find those people just 5 years ago, and now there's a lot more.
Did you find that when you were working with Filmmakers Without Borders, did you find that there was kind of quite a strong desire amongst Cambodians to be able to kind of tell their stories and see themselves on the big screen?
Yeah, the Filmmakers Without Borders was basically, I partnered with a local organization that served kids in like a pretty rough community, and their organization was kind of like an after school program, and I came in as the film teacher and taught this art class. And it wasn't an elective. All the kids were like, they had to take the film class.
Sure.
So the honest answer is that like some of those kids loved it. Other kids were, I remember I was like kind of tickled when I first arrived and realized that sort of all of the types you would find in an American classroom, the class clown and the teacher's pet and the kids who were too cool for school, that was all the same. It was like exactly the same there. And so I think that, I mean, those kids, they they weren't like, I really want to see the story of my life on the screen. They wanted to make ghost movies, and they wanted
Yeah,
to,
of
like,
course.
replicate the Hollywood stuff that they had seen. And so there was some aspect of that, but I did encourage them to also, find ways of putting their own story on the screen. And I think that was a meaningful experience for them. But that wasn't like, I didn't show up and be like, hey, I'm teaching some big course on Cambodian cinema, and it was just this like little niche project with like a handful of kids, and it was really meaningful. I think it was the first time for a lot of those kids that a grown up had asked them to be creative, and even
Okay.
diving into the idea of like what is creativity was something that we like looked at a lot in the beginning. And so it was really meaningful. But like most of those kids are not, it was not like a vocational training for them to enter the industry. It was more like a chance for them to just have fun, goof around, be expressive, something that I got to
Yeah.
do as a kid when I had my hands on a video camera that like they might not have otherwise had the chance to do.
Well, did that kind of going back to that those childhood roots of creativity and kind of almost relearning that, was that something that kind of inspired you to get back into actually making films again, or were you making films at the same time as doing this program?
No, so I was I'd sort of turned my back on the idea of narrative fiction filmmaking through this journey
Sure.
of wanting to work in global development in some
Mm.
shape or form. And I but it was at the end of that year of teaching. I was reading the novel Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is one of my favorite sci-fi novels, in that it has this like wild sci-fi premise humming in the background, but it's like this very humane, grounded story. And my brain just started spinning of like, what would the Cambodian version of the story be like, set in my student
Mm.
neighborhood? And out of that came the idea for my first feature, Karma Link. And it wasn't until that idea hit me that I was like, oh, actually, I've, moving through this world of development and getting to spend a lot of time with, with people in like rural Bangladesh and in a township in South Africa, people who are living lives so different from the one that I grew up in, and like being charged with trying to tell these stories in short form. I realized that it gave me a lot of sort of perspective or idea on the process of like globalization and cultural displacement. And so when I had this idea, it was very exciting, and I just felt compelled to work on it. And it was at that point that I realized, oh, I do want to try to get back into narrative, like this dream that I had as a child. But it took a while to come full circle.
When you got that spark back, was it always the case of, I want to do it in Cambodia, or was there any part of you that was like, back to Hollywood or anything like that? Or was there something about kind of a culture that hadn't really been shown on the big screen, or at least, not in probably our kind of culture so much,
Yeah.
that kind of made you say, well, this is a unique point, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it came back from me having this like specific idea that I only could have had because I had spent a year in this community teaching these
Mm.
kids, getting to know it. And so it was like very intimately tied, not just to Cambodia, but to Trollope Bike, this like community that's sprung up along the railroad tracks. And so in my mind, that story had to take place there. And I really like the idea of improbable art when things come across my path that I'm like, how did this come to be? And there's something about wanting to tell a cerebral sci-fi story set in Cambodia that like mashes up the Goonies with the kind of Black Mirror vibe. It felt like the kind of story that I had been training unknowingly my whole life to tell.
Mm.
And I think that that was exciting to me, because I do think that I love sci-fi and genre, and I think that there's this kind of patronizing idea that like a sci-fi has to take place in San Francisco or Tokyo or somewhere high tech, but to be in Cambodia is to feel like this culture is speeding headlong into the future, and
Mhm.
just like anywhere else. And so wanting to elevate that and share that perspective, and that's something that I continue to be excited about. I have this deep connection to Cambodia at this point, and so I think that there's something valuable in focusing on stories there that can match my sensibility as an American up with my experience living in Cambodia.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's get into your short film, The Sentry, a little bit for our audience. Do you want to describe what the film is about?
Yeah, it's about a suave super spy on assignment in Cambodia who gets a little bit more than he bargained for with when he gets into a tussle with one of the sentries, one of the anonymous henchmen that's guarding the villain's lair that he's there to infiltrate. And to say more than that is a spoiler, and I don't know in the context of this podcast, should I just get into what the whole thing, the journey that it takes the
Well,
viewer on?
I feel like to be able to kind of talk about it a little bit, we probably do have to go into spoilers. I am conscious that not everybody will have been able to see it because I don't believe it's available publicly yet. Obviously, you're going through your festival kind of timeline at the moment, but yeah, I mean, I would love to get into it. I think because I had a lot of fun with it. I think it's I love. I read the description before going in, but I didn't take it all in. So when it starts as a fun action film in the kind of vein of those 70s, 80s kind of kung fu films a little bit, and a little bit of cheesy James Bond in there, but then kind of knocks you with a very introspective look at death and what it means to essentially be a henchman. It really worked for me. I really had a lot of fun with it. Where did that idea come from? Where did you get this idea, and why did you decide to film it as a short film?
I think I have a preoccupation with neo-colonialism, and like me being an American in Cambodia and like working in the space of development for a long time, and just being like very aware of that, and and I love genre, and so like wanting to talk about this uh serious socio-political subject through a really fun lens. And I love
Mm.
stories that are very improbable, as I was saying before, um and that take you by surprise. Those are the ones that I'm most attracted to. And I think one of the seeds that began this specific story was this feeling that I have that, I love those cheesy kung fu movies and the James Bond movies, and I also feel like it can be very damaging to the human soul to encounter so much casual violence. And like I often find myself wondering what does it mean that I've seen so many simulated deaths in my life? And for the most part, these deaths are people who are completely anonymous. They only exist for the hero to like show how badass he is.
Mm.
And there's something in that I think also resonates with the way that like global capitalism necessarily makes a lot of the labor in this world anonymous. You think of the clothes that you're wearing, was probably made by somebody. Like there's garment factories in Cambodia is one of the biggest industries. And and that I was teaching these kids in Cambodia who are living in this rough neighborhood, and just getting to feel their stories and the rich full lives that they and their families lived. I think that that's something that I've been interested in putting on film. Yeah, always this idea of like the humanity of people that the system wants to distance ourselves from. And there's like there's this personal aspect of it where I feel myself as the spy in some ways, like traipsing into Cambodia, and with my like the power and privilege that I hold, and being a little bit floored by um opening my eyes to like how this different culture, this different system is working, and wanting to make a movie that's a love letter to Cambodia, that has a lot of details in it, the spy's journey when he's eating the prahok, the like fermented fish. That was like the moment that I had, that was early on my time in Cambodia, that was like realizing lots of little details like that I wanted to build the story around.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I was going to ask, was it intentional for the agent to be a Western actor, because he comes in, his actions leave behind a tragedy and a devastation that he's not even fully aware of, and that obviously kind of mirrors Western culture's impact on countries like Cambodia. So there was definitely kind of political undertones as you were writing this. That was a direct thing
Very,
you
yeah,
were aiming for.
very, very intentional. And I think that that's like a preoccupation that I have of all the art that I'm interested in as I'm out there in
Yeah.
Cambodia doing my thing.
Was when you were in Cambodia, was there anything that kind of I guess you're probably witnessing a lot of the hangovers of kind of a genocide and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Did that play at all into wanting to tell this type of story, or is it just something that came in as part of the writing process when you were thinking of like this fun idea, but actually I could wrap it around mirroring it to a political thing that was going on?
Yeah, less thinking about the specific history of the Khmer Rouge and more just about the history of like of French colonialism and empire and British Empire. I was walking by Buckingham Palace yesterday and seeing the like boulevard with all of the flags of all of the countries that have been part of the British Empire at some point, waving proudly in the breeze. And that to me feels like pretty inextricably linked to James Bond is meant to be this really fun way. You think of like a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's a really fun way to like rile people up to believe in the motherland. All of these. Tom Cruise is like, so his stuff is so intimately tied to the American military with Top Gun and Mission Impossible. And so I wanted to also harness that power of fun, but then subvert it and have it go the opposite direction.
Yeah, gotcha. And these sound like very heavy things, but at the end of the day, the Sentry is also a comedy, and it also has this kind of moral reckoning.
A lot of jokes.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of poop jokes. I really enjoyed those. Was it difficult to balance the humor with that kind of underlying critique?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an experiment to just go for it. It has like these like three distinct parts of the spy movie, then it morphs into this like buddy comedy, and then it gets like quite sentimental and sad at the end. And I wanted to try to go on this fun comedic ride that then to get to pull the rug out from under the audience and like give them a little sock to the gut. When you realize that the adventure of empire is not all fun and games. The process of balancing it did I owe my editor Sverre Christiansen a lot in that department. We had a lot of discussions around like the micro adjustments that can change the feeling of, it's like, how comedic should the spy thing be in the beginning before we get into the buddy comedy. And we played with a couple of different approaches to find something that we felt like was cohesive but still distinct.
And I guess there's like a stylized aspect to it as well, but you're able to keep that style in play whilst we embark on, almost a buddy road trip to Termite's family. And I mean, let's talk a little bit about Termite, or can we talk a little bit about the casting of Pangdara? It's a really physical role, a comedic one, and an emotional one, and a multilingual one. So you kind of struck gold with him there. Talk a little bit about casting him, I guess. You must have felt like,
I've known Pang for many years now. We met working on the set of a different action movie, and I was on-set editor, and he was first AD, but he's done some action stuff in Cambodia and also a lot of comedy. And he's a very accomplished martial artist. He competes in Bokator, which is the traditional Cambodian martial arts, and he trains people He's like a very serious and disciplined guy when it comes to the martial arts. And so I wrote the role with him in mind. I mean, he's also just like so fun to be around, such a great storyteller. And so I wrote the role specifically for him. If he had said no, we couldn't have made the movie. There's no one else in Cambodia
Gotcha.
who could do that. But the one thing that I didn't know and I had never seen him do was the drama. And yeah, for like his big dramatic scene, he has this music that he loves to listen to get into the to get into it, into that space. But he was telling me that he was really getting into the role, and like, you know, he like his character loses his family and he's going, but he's a ghost, so he gets to go like say goodbye to his family. And he was
Hmm.
telling me that he was like having trouble sleeping because he was like feeling the emotion of this. And he's someone who
Yeah.
like feels everything so deeply. So it was really yeah, the movie wouldn't work without him, and I'm really lucky that he was on board for this crazy adventure.
Yeah, he brings a lot to the role, and I think once you rewatch it as well, it's almost like a completely different experience. You are maybe wincing a little bit at how fun those opening sequences are, and then I'm feeling as well for the other henchman who didn't get to say goodbye to his family. And yeah, there's an element of you at the end of the film where you're just like, maybe there's chance of redemption. Maybe he'll solidify and he'll no longer be a ghost. There'll be some kind of comeback arc, but no, it's not there, and that was sad. But I wonder as well, was the opening sequence, which involves quite a lot of gratuitous, or at least you assume gratuitous violence at the start, was that choreographed by Pang as well?
Yeah, so we worked with him. He's a great fight choreographer, and also we had a fight choreographer, Dara Orr, who uh is the star of a great Cambodian martial arts flick called Jailbreak, but has since retired from this business and works in the government. But we were able to lure him out of retirement to choreograph our fight scenes. So the two of them kind of work together, and he's also got a team, and that was really fun. My first time doing any action, but those guys were really experienced, and so they were able to kind of help me through that. And I remember that right before shooting, Pang told me that he had been working on this new move where he gets thrown sideways against a wall. And it wasn't in the fight, but he's like, we have to do this. Like, I've been working on this so hard. Um, and so there's a moment where we're just like, okay, yeah, give me your greatest hits, and we'll
Yeah.
film all those. And he was really throwing himself around hard. I I've showed it to some other directors who do action, and they're like, like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like, rolling across the ground in this way. And he was really going for it.
Brilliant. And I wonder as well, when you cast Daniel Raymond in the role, was it a requirement to have like a really fantastic and cool looking high kick? Was that was that one of the requirements
That
for the role?
that was something that we lucked out on. He hasn't done fighting on film. He just filmed a Mexican series called They Came at Night, about Bela Lugosi in Mexico, and he has some sword fighting in that, so he had
Mm.
training in that. But this was his first time doing any fighting, and the fact that he could execute some high kicks was cool. I will say though, the silhouette shot, which maybe occurs to me, that's what you're referring to now. Not
Yes, yeah.
not Daniel Raymond. That is our stunt actor in a Daniel Raymond wig.
Gotcha.
That we wanted to have that. Yeah, that iconic silhouette shot, and also to get a little bit over the top there.
Yes, I'm sure there were other shots as well where he's kicking. I'll give it to
He
Daniel a little bit as well.
Yeah, oh
There's
yeah,
some pretty cool shots.
he could move. I was quite impressed.
Yeah. Very cool hair as well. Very cool hair. I wonder at the end, is do you think he is more open to the kind of destruction he's caused, or do you think there's a room of maybe he's not fully gotten it, but he's on the road to it? One of the last things he asks Termite is, are you going to tell your family about me? And I wondered if there's an element of selfishness there to that question.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, so in the end of the movie, he's like, Termite basically has wanted him to deliver money to his ailing wife so that she could get the medical treatment that he was working as a henchman to try to raise the money for her. And so the spy does deliver the money, in some ways saving the wife, but he's the one who created the problem
Mm.
in the first place. And that was another thing that we played with tone wise and worked through a lot in the edit, was like, what do we want to, how do we want to portray the spy at the end? What do we want the audience to feel about his journey? Because at the end of the day, I wanted it to just be as sad as possible for him to be opening up to the repercussions of his actions, and but also just to feel like uh to really feel like he really fucked up. And
Mm.
I, or at least I want the audience to feel that, right? It's like I want the audience to feel really like this is just sad. And you know is there some redemption, or is the spy being selfish? He's still focusing on himself in the end there in that last question. um and and Termite still tells him that he's a buffalo fucker, and we don't know the friendliness that Termite was bringing to the table all this time. Was it because they were growing closer, or was it just
Mm.
because Termite needed to suck up to this guy in order to get what he needed, what he wanted? um and so I wanted not only to subvert the spy movie, but also the buddy movie genre. The like, oh yeah, the classic tropes of the buddies growing closer together, like starting off at odds and then growing closer together, but then actually to call into question, like, are they really buddies? I mean, no, the answer is no, they're not
Yeah.
buddies. He fucking killed this guy and,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, ruined his life. Um and yeah, so getting to play with that. And we had a shot that we had planned to end on that was going to be a close-up of the spy's face where he starts breaking down and crying.
Mm.
And that felt a little bit like it was too much, making this a redemptive arc for the spy. And I felt in the end that I was less interested in having this be a story that was all about the spy's redemption and more just
Mm.
about sort of like the sad reality of this relationship between these two characters.
You have a predominantly Cambodian cast. Was that the same behind the camera as well, or was it a mix?
Yeah, it was predominantly Cambodian. We had a DP from Norway, amazing DP. I have a Norwegian producer on board this project, so uh we had some Norwegian talent, DP and editor and colorist. But otherwise it was really all Cambodians.
Yeah.
Our costume designer was also consulting. She's based here in London, where I am now, so we got to watch the film together last night.
Oh,
She's
nice.
big time, amazing costume designer. Just did the Amazon Prime show House of David, and so it was fun to have some international perspective, but by and large it was this Cambodian cast. And so, like, all the fight choreography was done by a Cambodian team. The set design, building this the villain's lair out in the middle of nowhere, was done by an entirely Cambodian team, and I'm really proud of what those guys were able to achieve.
Obviously, with a kind of multilingual production cast, I don't know if yourself. I forgive my ignorance. I'm not sure if it's Cambodian. They speak in Cambodia, or
Khmer,
if
yeah, they speak Khmer.
Khmer. There you
Yeah.
go. Do you speak Khmer? And even if it's just a little, like, what are the kind of challenges there when it comes to trying to, direct? I guess.
Yeah, I speak Khmer. I can get by. I can go to the market and but I like everyone working on this film spoke English. So it was pretty easy to work in that register. There's always going to be cultural differences that, as much as I've like lived in Cambodia and tried to pay attention to it, um there's always a bit more of a gap to bridge than if I was working with a bunch of Americans, in some regards. But To be honest, I felt that more on my first film. I was working with kids who did not speak English, and there were more people on the crew at that time who didn't speak English. And this time it was, yeah, it was a pretty like smooth, well-oiled machine, and everyone knew what they were doing and getting on. And I can't really remark on any specific challenges of it being like a cross-cultural production. It was just very smooth and fun.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I'm interested as well from like a screenwriting perspective when you're writing a script with multiple languages in it. Are you using a lot of parentheses, and then maybe hiring a translator later on to help you out with those scenes, or are you writing in both languages?
No, I cannot write that stuff in
Sure.
Khmer. The Khmer dialogue is, I just note that it's spoken in Khmer, but I write it in English, and then I work with a translator. And and also with the actors, I often find that it's helpful for them to figure out, you even take what the translator did but bring it into the language that they're most comfortable speaking.
Gotcha. And then I'm interested as well, if we stay with the screenplay for a minute. Obviously, it is quite difficult to build up that momentum to an emotional gut punch at the end of a script on, whether it's a feature length, or a short film, and it's probably even more difficult within a short amount of time to get you to care for characters like that. Was that something that came across in the screenplay? Did it work in writing, or was it something that once you had the actors involved, that was where it was all starting to come alive?
I mean, it was always my intention at the
Yeah.
screenplay level to go there. Uh, but no, I don't think that it comes across in writing. It really needs the actors to bring their humanity to the
Mm.
page. I think to realize, like when you actually have little kids running around, um, and you can see the dad's face, right? Because the most powerful moments are unspoken and were not necessarily written in the script, but it's just like when dad is watching his kids, they're goofing around, they don't realize what's going on yet, and he's watching them, and we know that it's for the last time, and just seeing the way that his lip quivers a little bit, but seeing all the love in his eyes, uh that's something that's like, there's no contest between how powerful that is
Mm.
versus what you're reading on the page.
Yeah. So if we go back to the short film overall, and I would like to maybe like discuss some of the cinematography. I think it's a really
Mm.
stunning film, and I love the way it opens with that kind of tower, which you have Daniel kind of climbing up. And I was wondering, you have these beautiful landscapes. You have a great kind of chance to showcase that because you're there. But what was your relationship like with your DP? I'm assuming you used kind of like drones and potentially some crane shots in there as well.
Yeah, no, that stuff was all drones. And we DP was great. He is Norwegian, but he has shot stuff all over the world. Very adventurous dude. He was just shooting a war film in South Africa, but that takes place in the Central African Republic right before he came onto our film. And so he's been around and is very calm and cool, all under pressure all the time. And but all the drone stuff was done as a B unit
Mm.
photography after the main shoot, after Carl Eric had flown back to Norway with stunt drivers. We had a we had a stunt driver on the moto named Papa Gogo, who's this like lunatic Swiss man who lives in southern Cambodia and leads moto tours around there. And the very first shot that we did with him, he like speeds off into the distance and then promptly like slips on the and turns the bike over on on some gravel. But yeah, after the main shoot, we went back with Papa Gogo and this guy who also lives in that town in the south, who has a drone and does like commercial real estate drone stuff, and I posted on the Facebook message board. It was a real ragtag group. The at one point that we brought the outfit for the Sentry, and at one point we found like a local kid and asked him if he wanted to, go around for a couple hours with us, just wear this costume and sit on the back of the moto. We'll pay him. And so yeah, it was kind of fun to get all of this really epic, beautiful photography that like makes the film super special. But it was a very, if you saw the behind the scenes of that, it was like extraordinarily janky.
Okay. Well, you did a very good job of not portraying it being janky at all. Was the visual language of the film that we see, was that always the intention, or was that something once you knew what kind of crew, what kind of cameras you could get hold of, was that something that kind of evolved as you were making the film?
Yeah, I mean, it was something. Yeah, it's always a dance when you're working on low budgets with trying to do the coolest stuff with what you're with the equipment that you have, the capabilities that you have. We shot on an Ari Alexa, which we actually didn't think we were gonna get to shoot on until the very last day, and then the camera rental company decided to cut us a deal so that we could no one was using the camera, so we got to shoot on a really nice camera. My DP was very happy about that. But some of the stuff that actually, like, I love how they're driving on the moto, how that scene came out. But that was, we had a process trailer for the moto where you're like towing the moto behind a truck bed with the camera in it, but it didn't work. The moto was too big, and so we had to find, again, a very janky solution of like finding a local flatbed truck, bringing the moto up on top of that. And that was like not how we intended it to look at all. It was kind of a shit show shooting that scene. It was the hottest day in Cambodia on record in the last 100 years. The road ended up being way bumpier than we realized when we scouted it. The trailer didn't work, all the shit. And while we were shooting it, I was like, is this gonna work at all? And now I find it a very charming part of the film. So much as I like to think that like all the cool stuff is intentional, so much of this process is just embracing whatever it is that happens on the day, and then pretending like that's what you meant to do.
Yeah. Gotcha. Which I imagine many filmmakers share that kind of sentiment.
It's really exciting. It's a really exciting part of the process. It's a little chaos in the system. I think that's part of why I love living in Cambodia, is the chaos in the system. I land touchdown in Phnom Penh after being in California for some time, and just like stepping outside and the traffic and the life and the smells, and I love that. And so I think I try to embrace that in art too, and not be too precious and controlling, and just be like, well, this is what's happening now. And like, what does this feel like now that like, this is where things have gone, and how can we embrace that?
Definitely. Well, they say, if George Lucas, if everything had gone right for him on that first Star Wars film, then it would not be the film that it is today. It was because everything went wrong and they had to work around it. That's why it is what it is.
Yeah.
So you finished the Sentry and you're now in your festival run. I believe did you premiere the film at the Austin South by Southwest? Is that right?
We had our premiere at South by Southwest in Austin in March.
Nice. And now you're here currently as we speak. You're in London for what I believe is the first South by Southwest in London. And you premiered, well, I say premiere, you screened the film last night.
It was our London premiere, our European premiere, in fact.
European premiere. Very nice, very nice. And have you seen a difference in kind of audience reaction from kind of American to English to the film? From, I imagine you're dealing with a bit of jet lag right now, but did you notice anything in particular?
Yeah, I feel like, because we screened in Austin and then screened in Quebec in Canada. I went to that screening, and then again in Aspen. Those are the screenings that I've been to. I can't say that I have noticed a difference. excited to talk to people last night of like, do they buy Daniel's British accent? Is it working for them? And I got some positive reports on that, so that was cool. But yeah, I mean, I feel like in the way it's this James Bond homage pastiche, and so it's exciting
Mm,
to get to play it here where that stuff really originated. And
yeah.
I have a few more screenings. We have another screening for South by London, and it's also playing Rain Dance at the end of the
Yes.
month. And so yeah, I am very much looking forward to like hearing how that perspective resonates with people.
So you coming back for that one, or
Yeah.
yeah, you are brilliant. Nice,
Yeah, I'm just
nice.
hanging out in your lovely country for the next month, and I'm gonna go rent a camper van and drive around with my partner, and then come back for Rain Dance and get the
Oh, brilliant.
real London Film Festival experience.
Oh, nice, nice. And then I believe you've also got the Palm Springs Short Fest on
Yeah,
there. Is that an Oscar qualifier or a?
yeah,
Yep,
that's an
nice.
Oscar qualifier, and yeah, I'm bummed that I can't be everywhere at the
Yeah,
same time, but you got to pick and choose.
absolutely.
That should be a fun one.
What's next after that is how's your festival run looking? Have you got any intentions with where you kind of want the film to end up?
Yeah, we are going strong. It's 2 months into it now, and it's 3 months maybe coming up in 3 months, I guess. And uh yeah, it's had a really great reception. We've won a couple of awards now for best narrative short at the Lower East Side Film Festival and Mammoth Lakes last week. uh and yeah, it's really fun. People get to see it. I'm based in Cambodia, so I'm like
Mm.
not going to that many festivals.
Tricky, yeah, tricky
but
travel.
but yeah, excited for it to continue its festival run, and I'm starting to churn the wheels on a feature version of the Sentry. And so,
Nice,
maybe someone's gonna see it at some point and be like, I want to fund the feature version of this, and
nice.
then I'll have the next project lined up.
I could see it. I could see it. I was going to ask what is kind of next in the pipeline, but I guess it's returning to make a feature and using this as part of that. Have you ever
Yeah.
considered returning back to documentaries at all?
Yeah, I've been doing that kind of stuff from time to time. Again, my bread and butter of the like the NGO and social impact venture videos. And yeah, there's doc projects that I'm certainly open to that. I've like talked to a couple people since making Karmalink, since making my big feature, of like potential doc projects. And so I think it's important to try to have as many irons in the fire as possible.
Yeah.
And I love all kinds of storytelling. So
Can you tease a little bit how the Sentry might expand if it was a feature, or is that something you want to keep close to your chest at this point?
no, it's I think that there's um the way that it's going is I know that I love this kind of buddy comedy of the odd couple, of the spy and the Sentry, and there being a road trip at the heart of the film. But I'm expanding quite a bit more the world of the spy. Right now it's like really kind of incidental to the story. What is he going into the lair for? But I'm fleshing out the villain and the agency that he works for. He's sort of he's the prime agent, but there's a younger spy who's kind of gunning for his position, and he's losing a step. And and you know and 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 kind of trying to build that out in a way to accentuate the themes around
Yeah.
neocolonialism, and like, again, whose story gets to be told. It's all kind of pointed back towards the same themes of the importance of humanity, and the ways that um yeah, empire is like pushing its agenda on the global south, still to this day. um and I think it's also, I'm an American, and there's kind of some crazy political situation going on, and I'm finding that there's aspects of that making its way into the screenplay
Yeah.
too. So
No
I
doubt.
like the idea of something that feels like it's really set in the 70s, and really living in that world, but can also be very topical.
Yeah. And there is always an element sometimes of history repeating itself, which is, not a fun thing, but there we go.
Yeah.
We asked this question to all the short filmmakers that we interview. So on the podcast, we've been working through our blind spots on the Sight and Sound greatest films of all time list, and we've seen a lot of films that are favorites of filmmakers and critics, but also ones that have like very much influenced them and influenced modern day films. And I wondered, maybe not what some of your favorite films are, but maybe some of the films that have influenced the type of films that you wish to make, or have made, or want to make in the future.
Yeah, that's a fun one to think about. I mean, something that has weirdly influenced where I'm at a lot now is Bicycle Thieves by Vittorio De Sica, which was in this like post World War II moment, kind of one of the first films to go out into the real world and cast non-actors. That inspired me a lot in my first film of like setting things in the real world. I think I took a class in Italian cinema around World War II, and just the idea before the war, everything that they had these they're called the white telephone comedies, like upper society chit-chatting and being dumb, and then after the war, Vittorio De Sica goes out and makes these like very like humane and political film, and that was and very entertaining. And there's something there that for me is just like this idea that every film is political, no matter what story you're telling. And so the whose story gets told is really important. And that's really animating the kinds of stories that I'm interested in telling, and why I'm based out in Cambodia and working on stories out there.
Love it. That's great. Well, thank you, Jake. Thank you for coming on the show and kind of sharing your insights into the filmmaking process and the writing process and the festival process, everything that comes with making a short film. I really, really enjoyed the Sentry, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing it one day as a feature length. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Jake there for coming on the podcast and sharing his film, The Sentry, with us and giving us insights into that filmmaking process. I hope that you found that really interesting. I know I did. If you're in the UK, I think at the time this episode is releasing, The Sentry is going to be screening at the Raindance Film Festival. So if you're there, make sure to go see it. I really, really enjoyed it. It's really, really kind of, I want to say fun. It's fun for the first kind of couple of minutes, and then although it maintains an element of fun and enjoyment, it's really kind of looking at a deeper, darker thing that goes on underneath it. And I had a great time with it, and I hope that comes across in the interview as well. If you're in America, the Palm Springs International Short Film Festival, it will be playing at the end of June there. And as always with these short films, if you keep up to date with us on Instagram, we will make sure to let you know when they are publicly available, and then you can come back to these episodes and gain even further insights when those films are there. But for now, that has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We do really appreciate it. And if you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle. We also have a Film Angle playlist, so if you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.